when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you're burnt out, when you can't focus, when you don't handle stress very well, when you don't have motivation, when you don't have libido, when you don't have drive, when you crash in the middle of the day, when you have brain fog, when you don't fall asleep, you don't wake up refreshed, you wake up in the middle of the night, and you're just not doing well, then the last thing you really want to be doing is weight training, because by definition, you're fatigued, and in order to have energy, you need energy to be able to lift weights. So today I want to talk to you about the importance of adrenal fatigue and weight training. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let me ask you first, does this sound like you? Just make sure you can see this here. Does this sound like you? So do you have no energy? We talked a lot about the things in the beginning. You get tired very, very easily. You don't have very good stress tolerance. So if you have demands, if you hear an email that your boss or your family member, or you get a phone call, that used to happen to me where when I was having some strain and struggles with my family and my wife, as soon as I saw those little dots coming through with the text message and I knew it was coming from her, I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna get in trouble. What did I do? I did something wrong. And you almost get Pavlovian conditioned that when we have a message coming or a stressor coming, it gives us butterflies in the stomach. It makes us feel sweaty. Our palms get nervous. We definitely don't have the energy or the focus to get through the day. Maybe we need a lot of stimulants, caffeine, nicotine, sugary foods, and ultimately we're making things worse. You get tired really easily. You don't handle stress very well. You're overwhelmed or anxious. You're in that sympathetic dominant state, and you're probably sleep deprived. So you're not getting up refreshed. You're not charging your battery. You're not falling asleep right from the moment that you hit your pillow, or maybe you are, and you're waking up several times through the night, or you're just tossing and turning. Does that sound like you? If those things alone sound like you, then there's a really good chance that you're suffering with an HPA axis dysfunction. And today we're not going to be really getting into the mechanics of an HPA axis dysfunction. We're going to be talking about, should I be exercising? Should I be weight training? Because a lot of doctors will not tell you to exercise and put that as part of your regimen, or they'll be very vague and ambiguous about it and say, nah, you could exercise, maybe just do a little activity, but don't do too much. And I find that that's not good advice either. As well, with an adrenal-based problem or an HPA axis dysfunction, we're also dealing with hormone imbalances. So maybe for males, they get a little more emotional. They don't have the capacity, the motivation, the libido, the drive, the capacity to be able to engage in sexual activities. Or for females, they have very little bit of libido. They are just not in the mood. Their hormones are imbalanced. They're irritable. They're tender. They're hot. They're cold. They're brain foggy. Their hair's falling out. They just do not do well with their hormones. They're imbalanced, and typically they may be taking hormones to support them. But at the end of the day, the topic today is, should I be exercising with an adrenal-based problem? As well, you're not bouncing back the way you used to, or you just can't hold charge. That's what people tell me is that I just have very little capacity. So if I do have a sexual encounter, I'm ruined for the next 3 days. Or if I do go exercise, I'm ruined for the next 3 days. So what I want to teach you is the what's, the how's, the why's, but I also want to teach you that it's a very integral part of your recovery strategy. So let's answer the question, should I be exercising when I have an adrenal fatigue problem? Should I be doing weight training? And that's specifically what we're talking about. We're talking about resistance training, contractions of your muscles. Very, very important. So actually I skipped one. Sorry, we'll go back to that one. But why should you listen to me? So who are you and why should I listen to you? So first and foremost, I suffered with my own adrenal fatigue-based problem where doctors did not believe me. I look healthy from the outside, and I had finished my graduate program, my doctorate program, had over $200,000 worth of student debt. My wife was pregnant with twins. She had to be put on bed rest. I grew up in Canada. I moved to the US. I had a lot of loans to pay back. And I also we moved from from California to Florida, so a brand new state, let alone a new country. Didn't know anyone. We were opening up a new practice. I was exhausted and tired, and I never heard of this thing called adrenal fatigue. And a doctor brought in the book called Why Do I Have Thyroid Symptoms Even Though My Blood Tests Are Normal? And from there on in, there was a section in that book called Adrenal Fatigue, and I was just blown away with the description where don't handle stress, blood sugar imbalances, hypoglycemic, so you can crash after a meal, or you get shaky, lightheaded, and jittery if you don't have your meal. You have a lot of brain fog. I didn't know where my keys were, where's my wallet. I didn't have motivation and drive. Definitely very anxious, couldn't handle stress very well, and exhausted and tired. And here I was having to be a father of newborn twins, over $200,000 worth of student debt. And to make matters worse, I actually injured my back. I had initially injured my back, and that was the reason why I ended up going through my undergraduate program of exercise physiology. Let me rephrase that. So when I graduated my program of exercise physiology from a really good university called McMaster University in Canada, which is a prestigious university known for its exercise physiology research. And I had graduated, I was a personal trainer, and I injured my back. And I'm from a traditional family, and we were suggesting for me to go for surgery, and that was the last thing that I wanted to do. So I had an exercise rehab background. I knew that I didn't want to go under the knife. So that's when I decided, okay, I want to become a holistic doctor. I became a chiropractic physician, and I, in the process, earned a doctorate degree. But then I graduated from chiropractic college, moved to Florida, and I injured my back again. And that's when I was exhausted and burnt out and found out about adrenal fatigue. I also have a specialist certification called CSCS, Strength and Conditioning Specialist. This is one of the highest ranking certifications a health professional can have if they want to be a strength and conditioning coach for, say, the Miami Dolphins or Miami University, or the top-notch programs, soccer clubs, football clubs, baseball clubs, all top-notch clubs have a strength and conditioning specialist called Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. I'm not saying this to toot my horn. I'm saying this to, why should you listen to me? I know what I'm talking about, and nothing makes me more frustrated when I have advice from someone who lacks integrity. Meaning, if you're getting advice from a real estate agent who's teaching you how to invest and they don't invest themselves, or you're getting advice from a financial planner who is broke, or you're getting advice from a doctor who's out of shape and they're telling you yes or no to exercise. And by the way, traditional doctors don't learn anything about nutrition, so for them to dispense nutritional advice, in my opinion, is malpractice. But anyways, I'm saying this because I have integrity. I've not gone under the knife with a 2.5 centimeter herniation in my spine, and I was able to rehab my injuries and continue to help other people rehab their physical, mental, emotional, energy to be able to recover. And I think it's really important to talk about because it's also a double-edged sword. It was one of the reasons why I actually burnt out as well, because there's a Goldilocks zone for everything. If you're exercising too little, that's not good. But if you're exercising too much, then you are gonna ultimately deplete your energy stores. And a lot of people do that as well. So when I say exercise and I say resistance training for exhausted, burnt out adults that are thinking they have an adrenal fatigue based problem, let's basically get the housekeeping out of the way. And you see the people when they work in a hospital and they run an x-ray machine and they have like a little badge here that shows them, hey, this is how much x-ray you're getting exposed to every day. It would be great if we had a badge that gave us a real-time information feedback on what are your energy levels, so that you could know thyself and you could know, okay, hey, I haven't been exercising enough, I need to work out a little bit more, or I haven't been exercising, I've been exercising way too much and I need to back off. So that's one of the housekeeping rules. The other housekeeping rule too is the fact that because you're watching this, this is just intended for information purposes only. This is not to over and supersede the advice of your doctor. Again, if your doctor tells you not to exercise, I would then again make sure that that's based on validity. That's based on a stress test. So that's what I typically want to get out of the way, is that you've been given a green light or a clean bill of health for you to be able to exercise. Even though you're exhausted and you're burnt out and you're tired and you have no energy and your capacity is low, you still have to start where you need to start. That's the third housekeeping rule, is that number one, there is a Goldilocks zone of not enough and too much. Number two is that you need to have the green light. Typically that's going to be through a stress test. And then number three, you want to make sure that what was number three? That you're doing it definitely properly, that you know your body's limitations. You start from the capacity of where you are now. You're not going to start where you wish you were starting at or where you were before, or you may never ever get to where you were before. But that has to be a mindset thing in terms of, look, your brain is a muscle and you need to work your muscle. If you don't work your muscle, you lose it or you use it. And that's why it's really important as well. And so, that's why you should listen to me. The other thing is I really do care about you getting results. I'm invested in you getting better. My mission is to teach exhausted and burnt out adults the truth about adrenal fatigue so that they can get their health back quickly. And I'm fixated on that mission. And it's really frustrating for me when you're not being told that you should exercise and lift weights when you're exhausted and burnt out. Obviously, with those three rules, getting clearance and making sure that you're starting off slowly and making sure you're in a Cinderella or Goldilocks zone. But aside from that, you have to do it. It's a prescription that you have to do. And the lastly is I'm willing to be your advocate. I'm willing to say the tough things that doctors aren't willing to say, because ultimately I embrace that. I embrace giving you insight on that. So let's talk about the what's, the whys, the hows of resistance training. So what are we talking about? Like, lifting weights is a term that we hear, resistance training, bodybuilding, strength training. It doesn't have to be in a gym. It's really important that I stress that. So it doesn't have to be in a gym. It could be in your home. It can be outside. It could be in the garden. It could be in your garage. It could be at the gym. It could be at the local community center. It can be at your friend's place. It can be at the park. It has to be done somewhere. We're not talking about getting into the Olympics. We're talking about giving your body the information it needs to heal. And really, there's been shown that lifting weights gives you the same, if not better, benefits than than cardio does, in terms of reducing inflammation, which is a big drainer of the adrenal glands, and improving your cardiovascular health. Now, the thing that's really frustrating for me is that when you have people that are with every excuse in the book, that I shouldn't exercise, I'm fatigued, I have a back injury, my doctor said that I shouldn't do it, I'm gonna get too muscular. There's a lot of different reasons for people to not do it. But really, at the end of the day, you have to be willing to bust through walls. With my most successful clients that I find that get their health back, is they know their why. They know that I don't want to be that grandma that is in a wheelchair, or I want to help my granddaughter walk down the aisle, or I don't want to miss out on my mom who lives in another state and have her die before I have the ability to go and visit her. Or I don't want to leave the house because I'm too afraid that I'm going to be overwhelmed and overstimulated. Exercise is going to help you, and strength training is going to give you that confidence to be able to do that. It's really, really important in that regards. So those are some of the whats of what we're talking about. Specifically, we're talking about full body movements like a bench press, barbell squats, barbell rows, deadlifts, pull-ups, handstands, dips, your own body weight. I used to tell people when I was a trainer, and I was training myself before going to chiropractic college, during chiropractic college, and even after chiropractic college when I was waiting to get my license. And I said, imagine that you are on a deserted island and there's no resistance exercises whatsoever. What you would need to do is actually do calisthenics or contract your muscles the way that your muscles contract. And that's how the machines were developed. Like if I squeeze my bicep, I have to contract at the elbow. There's gonna be a machine that helps you squeeze there. If you watch the bodybuilders that pose for shows and they do their muscles and their different flexes, that flexing is what we're talking about. And if you just did that at home, or you mimicked the movement with a soup can, or your own body weight, or resistant bands, or dumbbells, there's no shortage of ideas. In fact, when you see how to start a resistance training at home, I did a search and over 3,600 views came up per month on YouTube. And there's no excuse in my book in terms of not being able to get resourceful. Go online and find information about how to do it properly. That's really important. I mean, I put people on programs, and what I really wanted to teach them was how to contract that muscle, how to make that mind-body connection, and how to overcome the resistance. And really what you need to do is understand that we need to have a specific adaptation to an imposed demand. And in English, that means your muscles will respond to a little bit extra oomph than it requires on a daily basis. If you go less than that threshold, they're not gonna have to respond. If you go more than that threshold, they're gonna have to respond. And over time, they're gonna get more and more conditioned. And if you don't slowly, progressively overload the body, it's gonna go less than what's required and you're not gonna have a response. And that's an important concept in stress itself, because if you keep doing the same thing day in, day out, and you don't get out of your comfort zone, then you're never growing. On the flip side, if you go over the minimal amount that you need to stimulate a muscle by a lot, then that difference is going to be pain. And that's the same thing in life. If you go over the amount of stressors that your body can handle on a daily basis by a lot, that's going to cause adaptability challenges, it's going to deplete your reserves, and that's common sense stuff. So just make sure you're aware of that. The other thing I would say is blood flow restriction. Katsu training is a really great idea. It's where you put these different bands on your limbs and it restricts your blood flow. And studies have been shown, along with low load resistance, that can really enhance your growth and your strength. Now, a lot of women will say this when I was a trainer, and you still get this, is I don't want to get too muscular. And listen, I mean, at the end of the day, guys that have hormones that are growth factors like growth hormone and testosterone, they have to work out really hard to get muscular. You don't have the same amount of growth hormone or testosterone that we do, number one. If you've seen really bulky females, it's because they are on growth hormone and they are taking testosterone and they didn't get there overnight, or they're not being disciplined and they are building muscle on top of layers of adipose tissue and it doesn't look aesthetic. But they do now also say that there's the new skinny. Strong is the new skinny. So the stronger you get, the more compact your muscle is, the more energized it is. And we'll get in there in terms of the why in a second. But as far as typically how much should I be doing? I tell people, like, look, the heavy strength training typically is going to be 60 to 80% of your 1 rep max. That means if you had to push as hard as you possibly could, your 1 rep max of what you could do, typically the suggestions are 60 to 80% to be able to have some growth. But with blood flow resistance, and I'm not saying you have to do the Katsu type training, but there is studies that show that if you do that blood flow resistance, as little as 20 to 30% of your 1 rep max is going to stimulate hypertrophy. So that's really, now why do you want hypertrophy if you're exhausted and tired, especially if you're a female? Well, the reason you want that, and we're gonna get to that in a second, is I tell people when you're exhausted and burnt out and you have a demand and supply problem, it's not just your HPA axis and your adrenals that are tired and exhausted. Your mitochondria is fatigued. Your mitochondria is fatigued. So what does that mean in English? That means that your power plant of your cells don't have the capacity to oxygenate and produce ATP. So your power plants, your self-producing gas for your gas tanks are not producing gasoline for your cells to run. And by building your muscle, you build more mitochondria, which help you to build more gas, which help you to use that gas for ATP production, which help you in so many different ways. It's really important. So a couple of concepts I want you to understand is the FIT concept, so frequency, intensity, and time. So frequency typically is, now again, like all things being equal, you have the green light, you've had a stress test, you understand that there is a Cinderella or Goldilocks zone of not too little, not too much. And then you understand that you need to start where your low capacity is, because it's not going to take very much to overstimulate your muscles. It could be just one exercise. You may just practice like sitting on a chair behind you and standing straight up. Or you may just practice like pushing your arms above your head and doing that 10 times and taking a break. The problem with not knowing your exercise capacity, or let's call it your, we look at your, how is your body's, what's the word I'm looking for? Constitution. If you get tired at every little thing that you do, or you get overstimulated with everything that you do, or bright lights or sounds overstimulate you, or you take supplements and you crash, if your constitution is low, then that doesn't mean you get a free pass to go and do so many exercises. It may just take one exercise to actually do that. Frequency, typically there are studies that show that 2 times a week is going to be better than 1 time a week. So I typically recommend, listen, this is not the purpose of this particular talk today, but I think it's important to talk about frequency, intensity, and time. Frequency, we look when we're talking about resistance training at least twice a week. And that could be like a Monday, Thursday, or a Monday, Wednesday, or a Monday, Friday. But you want to have several days in between that for your body to recover and regenerate. And I want to open up the questions at the end of this, so that, because I put a couple questions in my PowerPoint as what are good pre-workout meals or post-workout meals. And that's really important to talk about too, but we'll get there in a second. Intensity is how much load are you lifting, or it's the quality of the movement, or it's talked about the work. How much work are you doing? That's the intensity. And again, 20 to 30% of 1 rep max. So if you could, at your strongest do like 50-pound barbell curls, and you do 20% of that, that's 10 pounds. So you really want to start off slow. And again, this is not the purpose of this. Training twice a week, like I said, is more effective than once a week. So why do I want to work out? Well, I just mentioned mitogenesis. That's where when you build your muscle, you contract your muscle, you build new mitochondria. That's going to help you with producing more ATP. It's going to put more fuel in your tank. It's going to help your cells, your tissues, your organs, your systems to work better. And that's what's not working due to the stress impact on your body. Hormesis is a very important term that really relates to your ability to adapt, So the old stress theory from Hans Selye was the alarm phase, the resistance phase, and the exhaustion phase. It's a good model, like, hey, you have a stressor, it sounds the alarms, over time your body becomes resistant to it, but then eventually it doesn't, and it becomes exhausted. And that's old news. The way we look at it now is that there's a cell danger response, and that your body is always trying to achieve a environment that it can deal with. And the stressors that it is imposed on the body causes it to adapt. And if you put those stressors too much, too intense, too frequent over time, then you will crash. But hormesis is the ability to, if you go slowly over time, your body will adapt and become stronger, better, faster. And that's why we want to do that, and the studies show like we can really build muscle up until 80, 85, even 90 years. There's never a time where you can't start to build muscle. It's never too late. That's what's so amazing about it. A lot of the people that I work with that have a fatigue-based problem, they have blood sugar imbalances, and that's where we want to make sure that when you contract a muscle, you're telling your cells to take fuel from the blood supply and put it into the cell. It's like open the door and allow blood to get glucose into the tissues. That's going to help with your insulin sensitivity. Nothing better. I mean, metformin, berberine, there's a lot of medications taking insulin. Those don't have anything on contracting your muscles, especially for people that are exhausted and burnt out. So one of the clinical tools or one of the hacks I'll tell people is if you're not stabilizing your blood sugar very well, you need to go for a walk every time you have a meal. I'd even take it one step further and contract your muscles, whether it's doing air squats or air shoulder presses. That's gonna help you become a lot more insulin sensitive. It helps with inflammation control, it helps with balance, it helps with strength, it helps you maintain independence, and it helps you oxygenate your systems so that your heart and lungs are moving, you're getting oxygen to the tissues, you're getting stasis of lymph tissues or venous return or waste products out of your tissues, out of the body. I mean, it's common sense in that regards. So a couple questions that I got are, what are the best pre and post recovery meals? I seem to get hypoglycemia after training, even after short sessions. So that was one of the questions that I got. And I think it depends. Like, I like to do fasted workouts. That's a whole other story, meaning I've become metabolically flexible enough that I can tap into my low glycogen stores and tap into my stored fat for energy for a fuel. And we teach our coaching clients about metabolic flexibility, time-restricted eating windows, circadian rhythm balance, inflammation control, and ultimately, that's not going to be a starting point for you. But it could be something to aim for. But what I would tell you is that what are the best pre-meals? So typically, carbs are very helpful for contracting your muscles. So a lot of women or even men that are looking to lose weight, they'll go on low carbs and they won't have energy to do a workout. I wouldn't suggest that initially. All things being equal, I don't know anything about you. I'd want to have a proper workup, a proper blood test, a proper genomic test, a proper hormone test so I can actually give you better insight. But I would say, look, you need to have at least 75 to 125 grams of carbs if you want to have, not in a meal for the day, somewhere in that area, if you're going to want to make sure that your muscles don't bonk or crash on you. However, aside from that, you also want to make sure you're getting enough protein. Now, I don't like this before a workout because, again, for me, I feel bloated. We're maybe looking at 60, 90, 120 minutes before a workout, or working out in the middle of the day. That was another question. What is the best time of the day to work out? I feel like the best time of the day is controversial. The best time of the day is the best time that you can get there. That trumps everything. If you can't get there in the evening, you can only get there in the morning, and that's not necessarily the best time of the day. The best time of the day is the time that you went. That's the first answer. The next answer is typically we are more insulin sensitive, or we are more glucose tolerant at right around 2 to about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And that typically, all things being equal, could be the best time of the day to work out. I would say it's not ideal if you are working out in the evenings because that is causing a release of cortisol. It's causing a increase in blood flow and if an increase in body temperature. And if you're wanting to go to sleep at a regular time, probably not the best idea to do it at that time. But again, the best time would be right after midday, somewhere around that time. And then as far as post-workout meals, there has been studies that show if you get a protein source right after the meal, it can, along with some carbs, it can help fill up those glycogen stores and repair the muscle. So perhaps we're looking at a smoothie, a protein shake with maybe some low glycemic fruits. Again, not the purpose of this video today. The purpose of this video is more to explain to you the importance of muscle contraction in your adrenal fatigue recovery. The other question I got is, what if you have muscle fatigue, not just adrenal fatigue? Everything applies to you. In fact, all of the people I work with, or the truth about adrenal fatigue is you don't just have adrenal fatigue, and probably you don't even have fatigued adrenals, meaning your brain signals your adrenals make cortisol. They are outputting some cortisol. They're not insufficient unless they are, and that's why doctors don't believe in adrenal fatigue. So ultimately you're producing enough cortisol so that it goes above the minimal standard, but it doesn't mean that you don't have an HPA axis dysfunction. Now, what I would say is all of those people that are exhausted, tired, burnt out, everything that I said at the beginning of this, can't focus, can't concentrate, don't have very good stress tolerance, libido is off, motivation's off, drive is off, crashing, your circadian rhythm is off, brain fog is off, you're inflamed. You have a form of mitochondrial-based fatigue or mitochondrial supply and demand problems. Your supply is too low for your demand, and that can cause system-wide problems. You still need to work out. You still need to lift weights. Watch what I talked about in the beginning, even if it's just sitting on a TheraBall, or it's on a couch and you're contracting your muscles, or you're using a TheraBand. Google low intensity rehab exercises, low intensity TheraBand exercises, at home, no weight exercises, and you need to do it as well. So I'm gonna open up the questions for you guys that are watching live. But one thing I'm gonna say to you is, the last thing actually is, what's next? What would you suggest for me next? Well, number one, you have to implement information. It's really nice to acquire information, but knowledge without acting on it is no knowledge. So you have to implement it. Number three has really been, so you have to get the knowledge, you have to implement the knowledge. And the third one is you have to ask for help. That was one of the main reasons I had my own exhaustion problem. And it's a verb. You can still have exhaustion even though you've had it before and you feel you've beat it. If you're not enlisting people around you, which probably is one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is put people around you that are smarter than you so that they can help you in areas that you have challenges with, and you can focus on the things that you're really good at. And then that way you don't spread your bandwidth too wide, and you don't have a fatigue or burnout challenge. So ask for help. And with that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post a link after this video to my schedule. And when I do a Facebook Live, I give you the opportunity to have a talk with me. It's a 45-minute talk, so it's serious talk. So don't sign up for it and not show up, because that is really inconsiderate, and I would never do that to a cardiologist, let alone to myself. But don't sign up for it if you don't intend to show up. That's really inconsiderate. Number two is, don't sign up if you're not serious about getting your health back. We're not here to kick tires. I'm here to troubleshoot with you, figure out what's going on. What have you done? What have you not done? What are you missing? How's it impacting you? What are you not able to do? What's the cost of this not being able to do these things? And how's it impacting your life? And then on the flip side, what I want to know is, what is it that you really want? Because if I had a magic wand and I was able to wave it, I don't have one, what would it be that you would want? Because I want you to be clear on that, meaning, oh, I know exactly what I want. I want to travel and see my mother in Hawaii. I want to be able to look good in a bathing suit. I want to be able to walk my grandson down the aisle or be there at his wedding. I want to be able to start a new business. I want to be able to serve more people with what I do. I want to get clear on that. And then what I'm going to do at the end of the call is bridge the gap and tell you, okay, Mrs. Jones, you've told me this, you told me you've done this, you told me it's impacting you in all these different ways. You told me that this is the impact of this in your life. You've told me that these are all the things you've done. These are all the things that I've written down that you haven't done. This is where you want to go. Here's a step-by-step plan of what you need to do to get there. Now, if it works out that I can help you there, I'll tell you exactly what that would look like, and down to the dollar what the investment would look like. But if you don't do it, that's not the purpose of the call. The purpose of the call is to give you value so you walk away with a game plan. But you also have the desire, the willingness, the ability. And I always tell people, look, even if I feel I can help you, I'm not just going to accept you as a potential coaching client. I look for three major things. Number one, do you realize this is screwing up your life and you need to fix this? Because I'm certainly not going to try harder than you. I'll try just as hard as you, but I won't try harder than you. It's like you being in the ocean, me throwing you a life preserver, and you're kicking and screaming as I pull you in. That's not going to happen. That's how I got burnt out in the first place. I'm not going to care more about you than you're going to care about you. So you have to be decisive. You have to be coachable. Like, you have to realize, like, even though it doesn't sound intuitive to lift weights, and maybe you're not ready to lift weights tomorrow, it's going to be a lifestyle change. And that's going to be something that you don't have to necessarily go to the gym because you hate it, but you have to come up with a way that you're contracting your muscles because it's going to benefit you. And or you have to be open to lifestyle changes. You have to be open to changing your mindset and changing what you think you've done. So many people will tell me, I've done everything, it's not working. And I'll say, okay, well, have you done this? No. Have you done this? No. Have you done this? No. And then when I tell them to do it, they don't do it. So you have to be coachable. You don't just pick and choose what you do. If you have a critique or you are looking for a reason why this may not be helpful for you, I'm open to that. But we as a team have to help you get to the goal. So that's coachable. And then the third one is resourceful. If you don't see your health as an investment, if you don't see it as a return of investment, meaning there's no price I can pay to be able to live 10 years longer, or there's no price that I can pay to be able to have more time with my grandchildren, or there's no price that I can pay to be able to not be handcuffed to my couch and not get outside and get into the garden because I feel like I'm gonna fall and break my hip, or there's no price that I can pay to be able to serve 7 more people a month with my business, and I can actually, income can be 10x what I paid to get in this. So that's what I tell people is if you're coachable, you're resourceful and decisive, then sign up for the link below and make sure that we give you value whether you decide to do anything or not. So what I want to do now is just answer any questions that you guys may have in terms of exercise, strength training, adrenal fatigue in general. If you have a question in terms of something else that you're looking for, like I know I'm going to start to be more interactive in this Facebook group and make sure that people ask about cardiovascular issues, or people ask about fibromyalgia, or what are the best supplements. I'm going to start to do weekly Facebook Lives, actually 2 Facebook Lives a week. So that's my commitment to you. So, hey George, hope you're doing well. How long should you exercise to be sure not to crash? Again, that's a hard question to answer because by the time you figure it out, it might be too late, right? So it depends on your constitution, number one. It depends on any physical limitations. I mean, all things being equal, we talked about getting a stress test, we talked about not doing too much, and we talked about starting from very low. So you're asking the not doing too much. And I don't know, if I was your trainer, I would say, okay, first thing I want you to do is I want you to do all those things, and then we're gonna just warm up first. So maybe we do 10 minutes on a recumbent bike. And then maybe I do 1 exercise, 1 set for a lower body, 1 exercise, 1 set for the upper body. Maybe that's it. And maybe we're only doing anywhere between 10 to 20 reps, and that may be it because that person's never worked out before. So it really depends on, have you worked out before? What's your constitution? What's your physical limitations? And then of course I want to know, like, specifically, what are your genetic susceptibilities? What are your blood testing labs? What's your hormone profile look like? So it's a really hard question to answer, George. But I would say you can never start too little, right? I mean, I'd rather be a little bit late, or a little bit early than to be late. Meaning, like, I'd rather not do enough and realize, okay, I need to push that a little bit, especially because it's usually the next day or the day after, if we haven't replenished and refueled and really put in some good electrolytes and protein and refilled our glycogen stores, that you go back to exercising too quickly. You went too hard the first time, you never replenished, and you went back again, and now you're in a catabolic state. So it really depends. I hope that's helpful for you, George. Any other questions, guys? I mean, please ask me questions about adrenals, about the best testing, why we do genetic tests. Post in the comments what your takeaways were today. And also let me know if there's any topics that you guys want me to cover so that I can help you. But I will put the link to my schedule. I hope that's really helpful for you guys. If there's no more questions, then basically I'm going to sign off. I'm gonna start to do Facebook Lives probably every Tuesday at this time, maybe looking to doing every Monday. And if you guys have a better time during the week that works really well for you, let me know that too, and I'll start to answer your questions. So, no, what I've said in the past is, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I don't use the term the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja anymore, but what I do hope is to end your adrenal fatigue nightmare. So have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you soon.